All right, so let's talk about Beacon. I'm so excited to talk to you guys about Beacon. Is our new curriculum management and lesson planning software. If you don't know, you need to know. I am so excited to show y'all some new features. We have a quick screencast, and I'm going to be talking over it as it's playing. But I want to show y'all these new features. So there's no sound with a video. But as you can see here, we're using a HQIM internalization template as one of the many templates you can build into Beacon. And we're going to construct a lesson plan. And so we're making a scope of our day together with our students, and we're adding lessons. Today, we're going to be using Bluebonnet lessons that you can see here. And so what I'm showing you here in this video is how you can build your planner for the day. And again, this is utilizing those Bluebonnet resources that you have available to you within Beacon. If you are a Beacon subscriber, you are able to have Bluebonnet. So as you can see here, we have pulled up a Bluebonnet course, and we are building our teacher plan for the day. We're adding our standards, and then we're moving in and looking at different lessons that we can add in. As you can see, we're looking at this one unit and we have it pinned. So we're able to share it, pin it, hold it, and actually dig into on the same screen what each element of our lesson plan is for that day. So no clicking back and forth, no, oh man, what was that thing that was on that one lesson? You can actually, with this feature, dig in on the same screen, open up this side panel, and look at the different resources that you're actually adding to your teacher plan that day. You can also pin it to where when you open up your lesson plan for the day, you're able to hold that content on that side panel so you can teach directly from your teacher planner. Um, and then again, once you're building your lesson plans, as you can see in this video, we are building a sample lesson plan showing you how you locate your units, and then you find your applicable elements that are going to be addressing the units of instruction that you've planned for that day within your scope and sequence. And then you're just dragging and dropping it over, y'all. So you decide on what you can see. You can see your standards coverage. You can see all elements of instruction that are included in that one unit, and you're able to pin it and see it all on the same screen. I've seen a lot of stuff, guys, but I have never seen something like this. Just to show you this great new feature that's coming out. We're so excited to bring it to you. And so that is coming soon within Beacon. As you know, we also have our scope and sequence analysis coming out, or it's already out. And so if you would like to get more information on utilizing that, the scope and sequence analysis, please reach out to training@eduphoria.net. We'd love to set up some time with you to talk about that. We also have office hours coming next Wednesday. So if you would like, and right now the link to schedule those Wednesday office hours, it doesn't show availability, but if y'all need some time, please email me, Allison@eduphoria.net. I'm happy to get y'all scheduled up for some office hours on the 17th. If you ever need anything, or if you're looking at this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what my district needs to reach their pedagogical goals, let's have that conversation. Again, reach out to us at training@eduphoria.net. I would love to talk to you about Beacon. So that is your Beacon update. I'm going to toss it over to the man, Mr. Jason Martinez. Jason, talk to us about data analysis with Aware.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be with you. So we are going to focus on a couple of topics in Aware for teachers, on mainly talking about analysis portions of Aware. And so we're going to start with single test analysis. Then we're going to move to Mastery Tracker. We're also going to go a little bit into quick views. And then if we have time, we're going to walk into just one particular report. And so that's how we're going to follow along. And this is, once again, teacher kind of focus. But if you're not a teacher, um, this is very similar to what you can do for the most part. It's just a little bit different for teachers. All right. So you see single test analysis is on the overview of a teacher login. It's the first thing there. You also see Master Tracker is here as well. But obviously they point to different parts of the navigation pane. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to single test. Single test has been for our premium customers the new primary place that teachers, especially teachers, go to analyze the data of tests that their students have taken, local assessments that they've taken recently. It really makes the data easy to absorb. It makes it very visual. It becomes an eye catcher to know what I need to address. So, any local assessment that the teacher has had their students take, they've taken, whether they be district tests, school level tests, team test, or teacher test, will be listed and available here. And when they click on it, it's going to open up into three different tabs for sure. And then we'll talk about this fourth tab as a possibility, and I'll explain that when we get there. So the first tab is this performance summary, which essentially is overall scores. And so things like raw score or whatever. But you'll also notice that the author of the test has the ability in Aware to set performance levels. And so those performance levels can be anywhere from one performance level, all the way up to five. In this case, there were three performance levels set, and so you're seeing the number of students that are falling in each of those performance levels that were set. And right now, I'm seeing number like 12 out of 23, but it could be the percent. So if you switch it, there'll always be a toggle up here to toggle between the number of students and showing the ratio, and then the percentage that's calculated out of that ratio. And then also a good convenience feature that is now always going to be available for single tests. And once again, this is not just for teachers, this is for everyone. But the number of students that I have that have been scored, so they've already finished this test, they've submitted it, and it's been completed and scored, versus the number of students that have been assigned this test. So, especially at the administrative level, it's always, do I go ahead and look at data now? Have enough students taken this test so that I can make decisions, or do I need to wait? And so it's going to be a quick hint up there on the number of students that have taken it versus the ones that have been assigned to take this test already. You might have noticed that I accidentally kind of clicked, but when you click on any of these windows, kind of between these performance levels, it's actually filtering down here at the bottom the number of students. So I have this student list, and so you see I clicked on formative assessment developing, and you see that performance level here is the only students that meet that criteria. So there's a couple of different ways to filter. Obviously, you can click these different sections, or I could come in and like filter by any of these demographic type things over here too. So if I want to pick on a particular ethnicity or grade level or any of these, you just check it, check the box, and then click apply, and then it's going to re-filter your students down here now to where I'm only seeing those that are Hispanic and also those that scored in this performance level. And so very easy to filter up here. And then you always have this button to reset. When you're looking at all the students, I talked about demographics a little bit. Down here, I'm seeing those individual students with their demographics. But if I wanted to see the groupings of how those demographics performed, then that's right here in this demographic distribution. And so you'll see here, it's showing me once again, either the percent or the number of students that are in each of these categories divided up on these different demographic labels for students, the groups. And I didn't talk about it earlier, but within the student list as well, once you filter, so let's just say I show only students who did not meet the criteria here. And maybe I want to put these students in some kind of intervention or tutoring. And here are those students, and all of these students are at the did not meet level. And so I have the ability to create a monitor group right here from this list of students. And so if you don't know what monitor groups are, essentially a monitor group is a custom built group of students that acts just like demographic groups. But I created it in here for my purposes. And teachers now have the ability to create monitor groups. They've always had the ability to use monitor groups, but now they also have the ability to create monitor groups. And these monitor groups, if created by teachers, will be only personally available to them. They will be personal monitor groups. So they will not impact the district or campus, but they will be available for teachers to use in monitor, as a monitor group. And so what does that do? Well, one of the things that monitor groups do, it becomes something that we can focus on test over time. And when I get into quick views in just a few minutes, I'll talk about how you can choose monitor groups in there, just like we can choose to focus on particular demographics. So the ability to create a monitor group is a very convenient feature to be able to focus on a particular set of students because of how they performed. All right, I'm going to move over to the Learning Standard Summary. So the Learning Standard Summary is taking TEAC performance data similar to what we see in quick views, but then making it very visual, making it sortable, making it, something that I can manipulate really easy. And also, most importantly, in this case, making it very visible on what level that those standards are being tested and how did our students score because of that level. And when I'm talking about level, I'm talking about the complexity level, or what we call as the depth of knowledge, right? So DOK. And so you're seeing the overall performance of the TEAK, but not just averaged together, noticing that if we only give DOK level 1 questions, our students are going to perform better. It makes sense. But we want to see, at what level of understanding do our students understand this standard? What can they perform at? And I can go over here and I can sort by lowest to highest. I can focus on, you know what? I want to focus on only DOK level 2 questions. And so you can just toggle on and off those different levels of DOK. And then down here, it's going to show you those number of questions at each DOK. So once again, very simple. This is meant to be very simple for the teacher, to where it's truly just see and click to manipulate. Don't have to build anything. Information is just all right there at your hands, and makes it easy to digest and work with. Moving on to the item response analysis. So we've been overall kind of data, TEAK level data, now item level data. The first thing I want to draw your attention to in the item level data is something that has been slightly confusing for some folks. And I don't like confusion, so I want to hit that at the very, very beginning. This side of the screen here that says percentage of students that earn points, it intentionally does not say percentage of students that got the question correct. So there is a difference between percent correct versus percent that earn points. On questions like number 3 that are correct or incorrect, which is probably a multiple choice question, right? Or it's got one singular answer. You either get it right or wrong. You cannot get partial credit. It's either correct or incorrect. There's no way to get partial credit on that. So these green things, now these questions, they are going to be equal to the percent correct. So 43.48% chose A. A was the correct answer. There was no partial credit. They either get it right or wrong. That does equal percent correct. However, for these questions that might be partial credit, where there's more than one answer choice, right? We have a multiple selection type question where there's multiple correct answers. If students have the ability to get 0, 1, or 2 points, if they get 1 point or 2 points, they're included in this. The percent of students that earned at least a point. And so I definitely want to draw your attention to that, because you may go to quick views and it shows the percent correct of the question, and that's going to be a different number than what you see in single test analysis here, because it's showing you something different, and that we don't want that to cause confusion. All right, but you might have saw, you click on the question, it's going to show you the type of question, it's going to show you the question, it's going to show you the distribution of, in this case, it was 3 different inline choice drop-down choices, right? And it's going to show you the interaction of each student. So if I come down, you know what? I want to focus on students that just got 1 point. All right, so I know they got part of it correct. So this student got 1 out of 2. Why did they get 1 out of 2? Well, I'm going to click on this student. It's going to show me their question. It's going to show me the answers that they put, their interactions that they had. And if I click and hold that, you'll see that 1620 is what they chose. The correct answer should have been 1602. So they got 2 out of 3, which for partial credit scoring rules mean you only get 1 point, right? And that is why they got it. So this is something that in quick views, you might see that they got 1 out of 2 points, but I would not see why they got 1 out of 2 points. This is something that is only available in single test analysis, only available here in the item response analysis. And so let's just go a little further down, right? So, okay, I'm going to say, I know that student put 1602, or I think 1620. I could even say right here in filters, show me only students that put that as an answer. So there's many different ways here in single test analysis that allows you to group your students by the things that they put to get it wrong or whatever. Once again, the only place in all of Eduphoria and Aware that you actually see the interaction. And so this was with the drop down or a inline choice question, but as you'll see up here, it doesn't matter the question. Even a constructed response start question, every question type, I see the question, I see the student's response. I see the points they got correct or incorrect. And if it was an extended constructed response question, I would see the number of words that they typed, what score they got, and I could see the words that they typed. So you can see everything right here. All right, so once again, can sorted by question number right now. I can sort by, lowest score to the highest score per question. You can do that different things up here. And lastly, I'm going to draw your attention to this. You might be saying, well, why is number two showing a 0? Like nobody got that one correct at all? Well, this is one of those things to where, this might have been a bad question. And the test author, the author of the question the author of the test went into this question and made the question weight 0. It doesn't count against student. Well, it also doesn't count for students. So if it doesn't count against students, there's no way that they can gain or earn points. And so there's 0 points earned, but that question was still on the test. We can still see the responses. It just, the points were taken away from it because the question weight was set to 0. So if you ever see a bar that's completely flat, that's a very good indication that that question weight was set to 0. All right, so let's talk about test analytics for just a second. So in the test type management for your district, you have the ability to turn certain things on, allow post-assessment activities for teachers to do here for this test type. There's also a test analytics part of the test type that says which level of user can see the test analytics for that test type, for tests that fall within that test type. And so teachers, if you're on the call with us or if you're watching, you may or may not see test analytics on a district test or a campus test. The district people that run Aware for your district will determine on if this is available. Now, if it's a teacher test that teachers build themselves or a team test that I build myself, the test analytics will be available because that's a teacher built test. So if you see test analytics, it's because it's exposed to you because it's either a test you helped build. If you don't see it, it's because the district has chosen, or the default is for district only people to see this. This is statistical analysis of how the test performs. I am not going to take the time that it would need, and you don't want me to go through all of the different things and what they mean here. But essentially, these 3 tabs are talking about student performance. How did the student perform on the overall test? How does the student perform on each TEAC at each level of DOK? How did the student perform on each question? This is how did the test perform? What is the reliability of test to measure what we're trying to measure? What is the reliability or statistical analysis of each question? And did they perform the way that we thought they were going to perform? And you might see some indicators here. I'm not going to take any time to go through this. There is a link to our extensive help guide article on test analytics right here. So if you click that, it takes you straight into our online help guide, which will talk you through every piece of this, tell you how we calculate it, tell you if you see that indicator. So those little indicators, if you see that, what does that mean? How does it matter? What you should consider if you see that or not. So I very much encourage you, if you have access to analytics and you want to be able to understand what it means, spend some time in this help article. There's also videos posted on our YouTube channel, that go through some previous recordings on some webinars on test analytics. All right, so that is single test analysis. Once again, this is a teacher view of it, but campus level, district level, very similar. Okay, we're going to move ahead to Mastery Tracker. So Mastery Tracker is the ability for Aware to kind of take multiple assessments that are testing the same kinds of TEACs and give you a cumulative performance on that TEAC over time. So this is kind of, it'll take a second, but this is kind of the end result of what, once it's been built, this is what it looks like. And I'm going to talk you through how to build it in just a second. But essentially, it's going to be for each standard that is tested, what are the cumulative score for that standard and the most recent score on that standard for tests that have tested that standard that were included. So essentially, what is this? So teachers they choose which students. So they choose if they want their whole class, all of their classes or whatever. That's the students that are going to include in a tracker. And then they choose which local assessments to include. And they can include up to 20 local assessments on each tracker. And then Aware is going to accumulate that data for them. and say, okay, the student on the most recent test that Eric took, he got 1 out of 4 correct on 5.1a. Of all the tests that have been included in this tracker, there's been 6 total questions test this standard. He got 2 out of 6. And then you see this mastery label. Well, the mastery label is actually defined by the district. What is it called? So these words may not be the same words at your district. Every district could name these words something different. And the teacher has the ability to create and attach and make those perceptions manually right there. And you see the little dot up there means that the user set the mastery label, the mastery level. But you see right above that where it says calculate mastery. So when a teacher first builds this, they go in and they put all the students in, they add all the assessments they want to add. It actually will come up and it will appear like this, to where none of the mastery levels are set. Once again, the teacher has the ability to set them manually, or if the district has turned on the ability to calculate mastery, there's this button up here that says calculate mastery, and then the district would set thresholds. 0 to this percentage is going to be the first level, or limited, or whatever the district calls it. Then from 50% to 70, or whatever those levels the district puts in, will be the next level. And so if that's been done at the district level, you click calculate mastery, and it's going to go in and color all of those things for you by the thresholds that were built by the district. Once again, the names could be different. The thresholds are going to be unique to the district, so everybody needs to know those. If you see there, just like a while ago in single test analysis, I'm seeing the ratio. I could also see the percent, always going to be up here. So I can see all of my students, individual TEKs. I can look at just one student by clicking on the one student. I could actually click on the TEK and see just one TEK, all my students. So there's multiple different ways within Mastery how you can view this data. Everything that's blue, you can actually drill into. So I could just focus on one standard, but this is just Eric. So I clicked on Eric's name. So I'm seeing just Eric's performance divided up by DOK on each standard. If I wanted to say, you know what, don't divide it up by DOK, show me the overall performance, then I can just combine DOKs. I can also filter by certain kinds of standards, readiness standards, supporting standards, and we also now have focus standards. So if your district has certain standards that we know we've struggled with over time, I can associate a focus standard, define them, and not look at all standards. You know what? I only want to look at our 3 or 5 focus standards. So all of those are available in here. You also have this mastery overview, which will show me now my whole class, essentially. Don't show me each individual student. Show me how my entire class performed on each standard. You see the ones that I've made my focus standards. They're at the top. And you see the overall performance of each standard on each test that's been included. And once again, the ability to focus on a particular DOK, to combine the DOKs, and then I see those distribution of mastery. Does my mastery distribution kind of match up to what I expect? And maybe sometimes I look over here and you know what? These were testing at DOK level 2. And so 70% of DOK level 2, that may mean that we have a higher level of mastery than what I thought, right? Because if it was only DOK level 1, then, I may have a different ballgame. So that's why we're going to give you that DOK level. So you have the better opportunity to, if you want to make adjustments and say, you know what, I know this says limited, but I know these were all DOK level 2 and 3 questions. So I really want to override that and say, this was at the middle level. So the teacher will always have the ability to manually override the auto set mastery label. And if they do, it'll have this little dot at the top that says user set. Our mastery tracker, very easy for the teacher to create. They just go into mastery, they create a new tracker. Once again, select up to 20 assessments, select the students from their classes, and essentially click finish. And when they click finish, it'll come like this. Once again, those labels will be blank till they either manually set them or they hit the calculate mastery to set them. But very little work for the teacher to do to be able to have this accumulated standard performance data over multiple assessments. All right, I'm going to hop now into quick views. Essentially, just as a review, teachers have had quick views forever. And so this is something that should not hopefully be too new. But one thing to point out is two things. Two things up here at the top. First, in the past, when in old aware, it would show their classes, and then all my students was below the classes. Well, we default to all my students now, but it doesn't mean I still can't analyze data by class. And so the class periods are still here. They're within this dropdown. Sometimes people miss that these days. Also, if you create a student access list, those student access lists can be analyzed as a class as well, and they would be below your classes. So I wanted to talk about that. Secondarily, you know what, as a teacher, I can see all of my students' data. I can see their science data. I can see their reading data. I can see their social studies data. But if I'm the math teacher, I'm probably going to focus on math. And so even though we allow you to see all data, you have the ability, to come in and set these filters to narrow down your list of things. Maybe I only want to focus on the last couple of years, whatever. And once again, this is fake data. But you come in and you can narrow your list down, and any test that would be new would be at the top. But when you do that, you can always save those filters with this filter set. So I'm just going to type in math. You can actually create save filters. And if I am the math teacher, you know what? Yes, I could always reset the filter to go back and see language arts and science and social studies too. But I probably want it to default to math. And so although you can build up to 20 filters to save, you can set one of them as your favorite, as your default. And then the next time you come to quick views, it's going to auto apply that so that the focus of that you're usually focusing on is going to be right there, right? I don't have to build that filter every time. I can always only focus on math. All right. One just quick thing is when you apply whatever template, and every district is going to have a different list of templates, but when you apply whatever template, teachers do have the ability to edit. And so edit, there's a lot more help. We don't have time to kind of go through all the steps for editing, but you don't have to just take the data that's available in these templates. You can make your own data. So I don't want to see all students. I want to see only students that had a percent score of less than 50. You can manipulate data in whatever you want. When you click edit, just know that there's also help for teacher editing. So if you go up to our help, you can look for teacher editing. There's videos within our YouTube channel on teacher editing. And then lastly, in single test analysis, I talked about making monitor groups. Monitor groups, if when made, will be available for you to use just like I might use Hispanic or ethnicity. And so I can filter, show me only data on the monitor group. How did the monitor group compare to other students that are not in the monitor group? And so you can do analysis of data because the monitor groups that you might build in single test analysis are going to be available to use also in quick views under teacher editing. All right, last thing that's on my list is just one report that hopefully people know that it exists. If you have single test analysis, I've already talked about how you can see the constructive response questions in there and you can see the responses, but we actually have a constructive response report for teachers. And when you run that report, it's good. My students hadn't made any responses, but you're going to see the students and you're going to see the typed response right here. And then you can filter by certain scores. If there's more than one question, you can filter by that. But you're going to see the score they got, the number of words they use, the number of characters, and then you're going to see all of that right there. And so this is a great ability to just focus on those SCRs or ECRs. And that report is kind of very interactive, right? So I can manipulate it and change it right here. So want to make sure that that was known. All right. I think that is all of my time. If you have questions, just like Allison said, please feel free to always reach out to us. And happy to help you in any way that we can, always. I'm now going to turn it over to Paige.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and talk about student portfolios in Strive. So thank you, Jason. That was a lot of information, and please feel free to reach out to us with questions, as he said. What we call student portfolios may not be what you are thinking of as student portfolios. You may be thinking of that collection of work where you have physical documents, you have a folder, you have a group of things. And with the state, if you are using student portfolios as a method for measuring students, there's supposed to be a committee or a team that evaluates those portfolios so that you have multiple people. That is not what we mean when we say student portfolios in Strive. Student portfolios in Strive is a feature, and it provides a way for teachers to document student learning at multiple points in time. And those examples can be test scores that come from Aware, or they can be rubrics that the teacher uses to evaluate other pieces of evidence. But you can have a combination of those items. Teachers can use student portfolios to plan for intervention or draw conclusions or monitor progress, and they can be used as one of the options for tracking SLOs or any other rubric-based assessment that you're using with students. They connect students and student data in Aware with teacher goals and observations in Strive. So we're going to talk about what those look like. First, the teacher will create a student growth goal. And I'm not going to talk about that a lot today. We've talked about student growth goals in other locations, but they need to have the student growth goal created. Actually, they don't. They can create the portfolio in Aware, but they're going to want to create a student growth goal to connect it to Strive. So you could either start the portfolio in Aware or you can start the portfolio from Strive. You have that option. I'm going to go in as a teacher who has a student growth goal created. So I want to create a portfolio that goes along with this student growth goal. When I scroll down, I'm going to see this box that says portfolio snapshot. Any teacher that has rostered students in Aware is going to have this box where they can create a portfolio or they can attach one that's already created. So if they did go to Aware first and start it there, they can attach it to the goal here. I'm going to create a new one from here, but either way will work. So if I click on create a new portfolio, it's going to ask me to give it a name, and I'm just going to write test for right now. Once I have a named portfolio, I can open it from here. And you'll notice that when I open it, it's going to switch over to Aware because that's where my students live. That's where their data lives. So that's where the portfolio actually lives. It's just connected to my student growth goal in Strive. So once I'm here, I can add students to my portfolio, and I can go in and see whole classes. So I could select an entire class by clicking on the name of the course up at the top. Or I could scroll down through all of my classes, and you'll notice there is demographic information about my students. Not all of my classes are balanced demographically, and so I might not want to pick a whole class period because I want my demographic makeup of my group to align with the demographic makeup of my campus. If that's the case, I might choose a few students from this class period, and I might choose a few students from another class period. And so I can go in and manually select my students based on that demographic information until I get the mix that I'm looking for to represent what my campus has. Those students will show up in the list over to the left. I can always click on the pencil at any time to get back to that list and add additional students or remove students if they have left the district or left my class. If I had, and I don't think I do in this particular case, if I had a student access list, it would show in here as well. So if you have people who work with students and need to be able to monitor students, but they don't have those students rostered to them, they can create a student access list, and that access list will show up in here for them to choose students that they can use in their portfolio. So it can be rostered classes or student access lists, depending on what the user needs to have. Once I have selected some students, I'm going to create milestones, and there are two different kinds. I have a button here when you first start that says create milestone, and then I have this plus sign. They do the same thing. This button is going to go away when I get something else showing in this space. So I can do this the first time, but after that, I'm going to be using the plus sign. When I say I want to create a milestone, it asks me if I want a rubric-based milestone or an assessment-based milestone. I'm going to click an assessment one for now, and then I'll switch over and show you some other examples. So when you say you want an assessment milestone, it's going to take you into Aware and show you all the tests that you have access to. And you can filter by subjects. So if I only want to look at language arts, I can show just the language arts. If I wanted to look at specific grade levels, I could look at those grade levels. Or I could say I want to see all grade levels. And it's going to narrow down based on any of those searches that I have. I could go and look at years if I wanted to. So I'm going to go back a couple of years because I don't know where I have data in my system that applies to these students. Since this is a demo site and they're fake people, I'm not sure what tests they took. But I can say I want to find a test. And then once I select that test that I want to bring into my portfolio, I get to decide how I want that data to display. Do I want to look at raw scores, scale scores, percent scores? Depending on the type of test, it might also have performance levels and star progress. Or I could go in and say, I'm really just looking for one standard. So if I have those focus teaks, I could say, for this, I want to go in and pick a specific learning standard, and that's the only one that I'm going to include in this assessment milestone. So it'd only be that one standard. If you do that, you need to make sure you're choosing an assessment that has multiple questions on that one standard. Otherwise, it's going to be 100 or 0 is the only result that you'll get. So if you have a test that maybe was a teacher-based test that was focusing on maybe 2 or 3 standards and it had 5 to 7 questions on each one of those standards, then I could pull one of those in and see what the results were for just that single standard. Otherwise, I'm going to pick one of these methods and bring in all the data from that test and just display it however I decide here. I'm going to go ahead and click create, but I have no idea if there will be any result. Oh, look, I do have results. I guessed well. I'm surprised. So I can pull in and see what the results were for this test, and then I could pull in another test. Again, I'm using old data because this is a demo site, but you might have this as a star release test from the beginning of the year, and then you might add in some other end of the year test, or you might wait and add in data. You probably wouldn't want to wait and add in the actual star results because they won't come in until after the teachers are gone. But if the teachers had a pre-test and a post-test that they're going to be able to get the data before school ends, then they would pull those other tests in. And it can be multiples. It doesn't have to be just a pre and a post. You can have as many items as you want. I am going to switch over to a portfolio that is a little more complete to show you that you can bring in a mixture of those test examples. So these are those assessment milestones from multiple tests that came in. And then I can also create a rubric-based milestone. So if I came over and said I wanted to do a rubric, it's going to open up a page that looks like this. I can name the milestone whatever I want. I can have whatever levels I want. I can call them level 1, level 2, level 3. They could be called approaches, meets, and masters. They could be called limited and whatever those other levels were that Jason showed in Aware. So you can name them whatever you want. It defaults to have 3, but I can always add additional ones down here. So if I was doing the state's SLO model, which I'm going to show you in my example, I would change these to be well below typical, typical, and then I would add 2 more for above and well above, and I would write my descriptors. So instead of your teachers having to do descriptors on one document that lives in one place and their tracker on a spreadsheet that lives in another place, they can put it all in this one location. Not that SLOs are the only option, but that's just an example people are familiar with. So once I had created my rubric, it would look like this. And I would go in and rate my students. As I'm doing those ratings, I'm not going to remember exactly what I wrote in my descriptors. So I can come over here and say I want to show the rubric. And so now I can see the descriptors that I wrote in that previous page, and I can be looking at the data that I have on Christina here. Maybe I have a writing sample in my hand and I have some assessment data, and I'm going to come over and based on what I'm seeing and what my descriptors are over here, I'm going to say that she is typical. I also have a notes section for every assessment, whether it's a rubric-based or an assessment-based. Every milestone I could go in and I have 1,000 characters to write about that particular rating. So I could say, you know, based on the criteria, she had X number of whatever in her writing sample, and that's why she is at the typical level. Or I could use this to say she is typical now, and my goal for her by the end of the year is to be whatever that goal would be. So I can use it for whatever I want to add additional resources, additional information in there. So I can pull in that information for my initial skill profile. I could also have my target skill profile. And you'll notice when I show the rubric there, my descriptors are different at the typical or at all of the levels for the target skill profile, because the target skill profile is where I want them to be by the end of the year. So it should show a year's growth from what I wrote as my initial skill profile. So these are different descriptors. And then I'm going to look at these students and say, based on the information I have, where did they land at the beginning of the year and where did they land at the end of the year? So this student was well below typical at the beginning of the year and just below typical at the end of the year. If well below to well below equals a year's growth based on how I wrote my descriptors, then well below to below would be actually exceeded growth because he went up, or this student went up 2 levels. So from well below to well below would be 1 year's growth. Going up another level would be exceeding that 1 year's growth. So I can use this information, which is informed in part by my assessment milestones that are pulled in, to make that final decision. This student growth column is what teachers will do at the very end of the year after they have rated all the other things and pulled in all the test results that they want to look at, and they're considering this whole body of evidence that they have. Then they will go in and interpret that data to determine exceeded growth, expected growth, or did not grow. That normally doesn't say nope. I should have fixed that. You can, as at the district level, go in and change what these are called. This normally says did not grow. But I was illustrating that you can edit those. So you can make them say whatever you want them to say there. If this view is a little bit much, because there's a lot on the screen right now, I could go in and click on one student at a time, and it's going to give me a page that will show me all the results that I have in. It will show me the rating that they got for the initial skill profile and what the descriptor was at that level. So this tells me this student was well below, and this is the criteria that means. That's what it means to be well below in this particular case. And then I can see their other assessments. And then at the end of the year, this student was below, and I can see what that means. I can also see any comments that were added. So I showed you how you could add that 1,000 characters in. If I had any comments in, and I don't think I did on this particular one, but those comments would show up here as well. And then I can make my final decision about the student growth, that end of the year rating here. And then I can also put comments in about that. And then once I have finished with this student, I can just navigate to the next student up here at the top and just move my way through my class, looking at all the data and making my decisions there, because everything's going to be on this one page for this student. So there's multiple ways that teachers can look at the data, and multiple ways that they can enter information. I am going to go back to Strive, and I'm going to go in as a principal this time, because principals are involved in the process. They're going to approve student growth goals, and they're going to be able to monitor those portfolios that are aligned with that student growth goal. So when I go in to look at this teacher, and we were just looking at their portfolio, ooh, I need to go back here for just a second and make sure it is assigned to the right goal, and it's not. So let me come over here really quickly, go to Strive. I disconnected it at the beginning, so I've got to put it back. I'm going to take that one off, and I'm going to attach a portfolio, and this is the one that I want to attach. So if I had started this one in Aware, I could attach it like I just did, or I could create a new one from here if I didn't have one in Aware. So I'm going to save this goal and go in as a principal and do a little quick refresh up here. And now when I'm in as a principal, looking at this teacher, I can go into that goal and I can see the portfolio that's there. It is not a live link for me to go in and edit that portfolio like it is for the teacher. But what I do have are these two icons over here. The one on the right will give me a little drop down arrow. That's what we call the portfolio snapshot. It's going to show me just a preview of the details of this rubric. So I can see what rubrics are in there. I can see what assessments were used to collect data, and I can see those ratings start to come in at the end. How many of the students, I still have 8 that have not been rated, but of the ones that have been rated, I can see what the percentages are. At the beginning of the year, I'm going to want to look at the initial skill profile for my teachers that I supervise and see if I think they're writing their descriptors well, and if they are on point, if they are separated by level, if it's clear what the differences are there. And then I'm also going to want to look at the target skill profiles to see if they have indeed made those target skill profiles a year's growth from what the initial skill profile descriptors were. So the principals can always see that information. They can't edit it, but they can go in and look at it and have that conversation. And then as the teacher is working on it, I can also view with this eye icon a non-editable version of the portfolio. I can't go in and change anything, but I can look at how these students are rated, and then based on that data, do I think the teacher is accurate in their final determinations? So the principals can watch that data come in, they can monitor the progress that the teacher is making with their portfolio, and they can have those conversations with the teachers about the portfolios as they're using them. Again, these are great for the SLO model if you're using that for any of your subjects that don't have pre and post tests available, but you could use this for any rubric-based assessment or combination of rubric and assessment, or it could be just a series of assessment milestones that you use to determine that final growth. So you can use it however you want to, just to make sure that you get the information out that you want. Any questions in the chat?
Do not see any.
I'm not
Okay.
seeing any. They're pretty
Well,
quiet today.
that's great. They're either really tired. Um, okay, so a couple last things. There are some reports that you can run to kind of monitor the process. So I can go in and run the goal summary spreadsheet at the beginning of the year to see if I selected student growth goals, I would be able to see if my teachers had submitted their student growth goals, and I could get those approved. And then I could also go in and approve the goals in a variety of ways. There's a little widget at the top of the page for principals to go in and approve goals. They can also go in to the goal itself and open it up there, or I can do it from the activity tracker. And then this other report will show you the details of the goal, and it also will include portfolio details. So I could see here the goal statement, and I would know that's where that teacher needs to be evaluated because that's where their students are going to be measured. And then over to the right, there will also be details about the name of the portfolio, how many students are in that portfolio, and some of the demographic information. So I can kind of check on things with the report as well. And then we talked about the snapshot and the view. So final questions for today, any?
Yeah, I think it's one of those Wednesdays where, like you said, they're either just really tired or we've covered everything. So
It's hump day, I know.
it
Okay,
is. Oh,
if you
we
think of if
do
you
everything.
think of questions after the session is over with, remember you can always email us at training@eduphoria.net, and we'd be happy to get back to you.